Simple. See, we're live. That's how easy that is. So, hey, world. This is another episode of the KEW Exchange, which obviously I've been taking it much slower these days, having more self-compassion and taking care of myself a lot better. As I go through transitions, transformations, and all those other great things, it's like being an adult and still getting birth through a, 10 centimeter dilation. That's kind of what it feels like when you're going through it. So I want to introduce you to AdaPia, I'm not even going there, AdaPia D, and we're going to leave it at that because I'm going to butcher, and I don't want to. She is an amazing human being. I adore her tremendously. Our first conversation, I immediately said, we're booking you on the show. And I immediately started introducing her to my network because I just have such a tremendous amount of respect for her and everything she's done. Why don't you give everybody a little bit of an intro to who you are? And we'll start there.
Sure. You were getting my name right. You were starting to say Dorico, and then your mind popped in. I watched it happen.
I know.
I was like, oh, there's that nasty little voice going, you're going to get it wrong.
Yep. That's what happens, right? Like, I mean, my mind always gets in the way of myself. It just never fails. And it's torturous. It really is torturous sometimes. So
yeah, I hear you. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this when we met, like how I can see, hear, feel the mind come in and try to trip me up for whatever reason it does that. And so it gets really interesting when we can see it and experience it and like be in that witness place. So I guess to introduce myself, how to introduce myself, I would say we can talk about the journey that I've been on. We can put data points to it. I can say, I started waking up in 2011. I had like a big like lightning bolt moment, one of my biggest defining moments. And that was the first one. And it was just a process of like opening and like learning who I am. And then it proceeded, and it would just like hit certain moments. And 2017 was another like major one where, I can by definition sort of say that it was one of those dark nights of the soul from the perspective of it being very mystical. And yet I had to ground it, right? Like I had to ground it because that has been my understanding of what it means for me, right? And it's different for everybody. Some people, a lot of times when it happens, there's a leaving or a shedding or things go away, and that's normal because it's like things are out of alignment, and then there's the finding of alignment. And for me, that crisis point in 2017 was around career, because I was like, I'm this like, my whole life had been around my career. And so when that basically just like sort of taken away from me, like just nothing was working, like nothing. It was just like the really hard to comprehend and with the mind. And because I had to completely do away with all those preconceived notions and actually go within. And that was like the whole journey. And since then it's been an integrating of that with my path, with who I am, with what I'm doing. And it's nothing to do with like role, like it's nothing to do with a job. I work in private equity and real estate. I'm an investor. Like it's not about that. I didn't abdicate. But I certainly thought I needed to, and I kind of did at first. I abdicated. I went into like this like deep place of judgment, self-judgment. And I had to like take myself out of it through, like you said in the beginning, right? Like self-love and levels of compassion and understanding of self that aren't what I conceptually thought an awakening was. Like I thought an awakening would be like, this is going to be the best thing ever. Life's going to be easy. Everything's going to be amazing. And it's like, at least my experience, and I don't know anyone who's had an awakening that's been all angelic like, but it's brutal. It's brutal until it's not.
It's okay. So for me, when I explain it, it's the most torturous
Yeah.
but empowering
Yeah.
process ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the duplicity statement because it is a duplicitous feeling. I go from extreme to extreme, right? Because even while you're going through those transitions, those leveled ups, whatever you want to call it, right? I don't
Yeah.
like level up because I don't think it's a hierarchical thing.
Yeah.
It's our own personal evolution, and we just evolve further. We are continue our own evolution, right? Down our own path. It's not hierarchical, like oh my gosh, I can't even speak today. Against anyone else, better than anyone else, any of those things, right?
Yeah.
It's truly our personal journey and our soul's journey, and it's such an interesting way. Like it's such a crazy experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just a crazy, crazy experience, and I don't know how to always put it into words because it doesn't make sense. Because half of the time it's like you're on this spiritual high, but then just as soon as the spiritual high kicks in, you're getting kicked in the face because
Yeah.
it's this overwhelmed flood of I'm still stuck being human, and how do I fix that? Because it's really annoying and gets in the way,
Mm-hmm.
and it's torturous at times, like
Yeah.
being divine and finding your divine self and your soul center, whatever you want to call it, right? There's so many words for it. For me, I always say soul center because it's just easier to
Yeah.
articulate, understand,
Mm.
and try to live into daily, right?
Yeah.
As a human experience, it's it's this it's just such this paradigm, and I've got it to the point now where I'm pretty good about I'll get a couple good months in a row, maybe
Mm-hmm.
5 months, 6 months. I think that's about the longest I've gone. And you, like you were saying before we went live, you pay attention to the moon cycles. I don't.
Right.
I feel like too much information is dangerous for me, so I kind of stay away from it because I'll start self sabotaging a month beforehand, saying, oh, well, here comes the bad time, so let me just start that a
Oh.
month early. So I got to do the prep negativity before the negativity kicks in. So knowing myself, I'd rather not know and just get kicked in the face a bunch of times, and feel like a human battering ram. But
Mm.
it's such an entangled process, right? And
Yeah.
I've been working with a lot of different people around the world, lots of shamans, lots of mystics, lots of all these interesting individuals, and they just keep saying allow, like it's the
Mm-hmm.
magic word, right? Which is allow.
Yeah.
Now, no one has taught me what that means or how to get there,
Mm.
right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's part of our personal journey also is hitting that space for ourselves in our own way that works for us.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm going through the kick in the face, like I want to smack everyone that says allow. Like I literally want to just spiritually smack everyone. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like run around smacking people. But it's just a process, and
Mm.
it really is a major part of our journey, right? It's part of who we are. It's part of what we're here for, and it's about finding that balance for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So so why don't we go into a little bit more detail? What was 2011 like for you?
So 2011 was so that moment, which is the moment that I recounted in a live speech, which then Goldcast turned into a very viral video. It was like 40 million views, 250,000 shares. Was the moment when I realized that I had been living basically my whole life, but especially the last 9 years, because I was married, I was in this place, I was in this space, of like I just like I literally woke up. I was like, what am I doing? I'm miserable. I'm like trying to like kill myself in weird ways. I was anorexic and had all kinds of body dysmorphia, like overeating or like under eating, over exercising, like just, I had so much and I didn't know that this at the time, but like all this like energy down in my solar plexus would just like it was like I would joke and say I was hangry, and it's true, but I was also just like I carried so much anger down here because essentially, like, if we know about the chakras, then this is like your seat of personal power, and it was like not okay. And for 9 years I had received all kinds of signals of this is not okay, this is not okay. Or rather, because everything is for a reason and everything sort of is okay in a sense. But I was receiving signals around like, this is not good for you right now. Like, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then I really, really woke up. And so that was leaving. That was setting both myself and my ex-husband at the time free, because we were both miserable. And, it was like an act of like deep courage against like intense fear. But I couldn't not, like, I literally woke up in a flash moment. And
But hang on a second, because your story has more details, and I'm going to fill in for
it
you.
does have more details, sure. Yeah.
Like, I mean, you were trapped in a foreign country, right? Like, you were living in a foreign country with your ex-husband.
Yeah.
So it's not like you were in home, right? Or like around home where you had anyone around you, where you even knew the language, right? Like, I mean, I think when you first went there, you didn't speak Italian fluently.
Oh no, Italian's my first language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, but I mean, culturally, totally different. And I had the sort of handicap that because my parents are Italian and I sort of grew up Italian in Canada, I thought I was Italian.
Until you went there.
Definitely not. I'm definitely not. Like, I grew up North American, Canadian. Like, yeah, there's Italian. Culturally, massive culture shock. Huge culture shock. And yeah, I mean, I was 22 when I moved there. Like, everybody, like, there's all kinds of reasons I don't necessarily want to like get into of like why and all this, but like I 100% felt trapped. And I couldn't go home. I wouldn't let myself go home out of pride.
You imprisoned yourself.
Yeah.
You imprisoned yourself.
I did, for sure. I did. And it was like, but it was also like, in a sense, like, like the emergence of a diamond, like it's just the pressure, and then it cracks, or like the way maybe a seedling cracks through the hull of a seed. Intense pressure, just the most intense pressure. That was also the time though when I started to explore mindfulness. Like, I started doing meditation. I remember getting actually sometime, I want to say it was like 2003 or 4-ish. And I was doing one of those, like, I had Hollow Things at the time. That was my first introduction to binaural beats through the company Hollow Things. And I remember doing one, and I had the first ever that I could recall, at least since from before I was a child, when I very much was tuned into these abilities. I had like a very strong visual that came through. It was just like, boom, it opened me, and it was basically like this lion that came through. And then I was later told by somebody doing like energy work, actually 2 different people. One is a Vedic astrologer and one was an energy worker, that said the lion is one of my animals, one of my spirit animals. So I found that really interesting. But regardless, like, I sought to figure out myself in all kinds of other, ways. So, everything serves purpose, but it was, everything that I have understood from that time, I'm able to apply in my life today, right? Like, you have to be able to go mine the past for the lessons, for the indications, for, it doesn't mean living in the past, because you don't want to give it energy other than forgiveness. But you do want to be able and have the courage to go back. I call it compassionate re-experiencing, and see yourself for who you were, like really see yourself for who you were, understand your motivations at the time. And that naturally just leads you to go, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I was doing my best. I had the best intentions, and then you free yourself. Like, it's a very simple but very powerful exercise.
It's all part of the healing journey, right? Like, you've got to go back and acknowledge where you were at, acknowledge the fact that you didn't know then what you know now.
Totally.
Right. And that was part of the experience. And then you forgive that self, and you forgive your inner child, and you forgive the things that you didn't know that you needed to learn to be where you are today.
Yeah.
And I'm going through this journey daily, because I'm still trying to heal from everything. Right. And, I procrastinated and waited a long time, and was awake and ran, was awake, ran, was awake, ran. So, I do everything the hard way. So it's a little bit more dramatic with me. More like a trilogy instead of a single movie. But it's, but I get it and I feel it. And, you know, that healing part is so powerful because that's like what you said, that's part of releasing those emotions that are attached to it, is going back and infusing the forgiveness, the self-forgiveness, the self-love, and having, you know, self-compassion for that version of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, I look at my marriage, which a lot of it was similar, right? 8 years, I shrunk myself, I minimized myself, I put myself into this box and felt prisoned. That's how I felt. When I walked away, it freed both of us.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't quite have the greatest outcome for both sides, especially my children, but it's all getting worked out now. It all needed to happen the way it did so I can be who I am today.
Yeah.
And so they can become who they're meant to be, right? And that's part of the journey. And trying not to self-blame, right? Trying not to blame, guilt, and shame ourselves to
Yeah.
no end.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the first place we tend to go when we're beginning whichever piece of the journey is, because it's a function of the human mind. And until we transcend the human mind, that's just kind of where we go. And like eventually you don't go there anymore. So for example, a few months ago in December of 2020, I had a massive health crisis. I have Crohn's disease. I have had since I was 16. And 3 days after moving into my new home, this amazing like mountain, like the state park is my neighbor kind of a thing, just like the most amazing place. I got like extremely ill. And I have never been this ill in my life. And I have a very strong constitution. Like my body is like insanely strong. And I went on about a 6-week journey of being mobilized. The inflammation was so much in my body that I couldn't walk. I couldn't use my upper body, and I was in so much pain chronically that I would basically be passed out. I needed help getting out of bed. Like my husband would actually have to lift me out of bed because I didn't have like nothing. I've never, and it's Crohn's, so it's like your digestive system. And so I had like all kinds of dysregulation, and I found myself in the situation of, and I could see the thoughts come through of like punishment, right? Like, what have I done to deserve this? Or like, am I being punished? Does this house not like me? Did I not properly introduce myself to the house and ground myself in the land, like honoring practices? And so I thought about it a little bit, but there was no emotional charge to those. So I was like, no, this is not it. And I essentially, like when you say allow, right? I let it happen without thinking about it. You know, I lived in such intense pain that I would vomit from the pain. I've never experienced anything like this in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost like 15 pounds, like just gone. Three weeks. I was like skin and bones, couldn't eat. But I noticed the thoughts about punishment, and then I quickly let them go. I just didn't let them stick. Essentially, letting go is like, don't let it stick. Maybe that's like a better way. And then I just let it be. I didn't shame myself. I didn't blame myself. I kind of went through a process also of thinking, right? Because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was getting like lupus because
Right.
the body inflammation, and I couldn't regulate at night. I was sweating like crazy, and no, I'm not in menopause. Like, just things like that. And I was like, if I'm not my physical body anymore, if I can't ever go back, let alone to like my yoga practice, which was my first concern. So I was like, the first week, I'm like, what if I can't do a handstand anymore? So like, I love my inversion practices. And then afterwards, it turned into like, what if I can't like leave the house anymore, which I couldn't for like a month.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing myself as like, but I'm still here.
Mm-hmm.
I still exist. And I'll say this, I have never experienced such depth of gratitude and love and support as I did when I was sick like that. And it just came to me.
And that
And
was really recent, wasn't it? That was
yeah, it was
like,
December, January.
right, because when we talked, you were just coming out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I turned it around as quickly as it came on, because it's not just it's not just physical. It's like the physical is a manifestation of an energetic, and I turned it around with a very strong intention. And I remember the day. It was January 15th. It was the day after I came back from a colonoscopy, where my doctor said, I've never seen someone's intestine in such bad shape as yours. Get ready to cut the whole thing out. You're probably going to need that kind of surgery and an ostomy, which is this little bag that, basically collects your food after you go through your stomach. And so I woke up the next morning and I just was like, nope, I'm not going to be sick and I'm not going to be weak. Nope, I'm not going to do it. Because I understood what I was up against physically. And I took a very concrete action, which is symbolic, but really meaningful. Because mind you, I couldn't even, like, half the time my fingers were in like crow pose because of the inflammation. I stripped the bed and I put the sheets in the washer, and that was not an easy task for me to do. And from that day forward, even immediately that day, because I went downstairs and my husband and his parents had come to help take care of me for that week leading up to the colonoscopy and stuff. And they were all like, you look a lot better. And I was moving and I was hungry and it was immediate. And my doctor has said to me, I've never seen anybody turn it around so quickly. And I said, I know.
It's funny. I have a thyroid issue, right? And I think we talked a little bit about that. I'm trying to remember when we talked. Was it like the end?
I don't think we talked about your thyroid.
No. It's funny because we talked sometime in January, right? It was like the end of January. Is that when we talked? Maybe the first week of February?
Yeah, like February-ish. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So at that point, I had a thyroid flare-up.
Oh.
And I don't know if you know anything about thyroid flares. I have Hashimoto's, which means it's hypothyroidism, which means it doesn't operate. My autoimmune system is attacking my thyroid. And basically, I had a flare-up in end of January, beginning of February, got blood work done because I knew it was off, right? Accounted it all to physical. I'm still kind of lost on that one. I want to account it to physical because if I admit that it's spiritual, then I just ignored it myself. So I'm still battling that one, but I'm getting better. So I got my blood work done in February, but then we had the snowstorm, the ice storm in the middle of Arkansas because that's normal. And everything was delayed. I didn't get the results to the beginning of March. By the time I spoke to my doctor at the end of March, my body was so inflamed that I would have sworn I had MS because every muscle in my body was burning on fire. I would take my kids to school. I would come back. I would curl into a fetal position on the ground, cry in pain until I went to go pick them up every single day for a week straight. Now, keep in mind, right? I'm in the middle of nowhere, 1,200 miles away from anyone. So if I'm telling anybody how I feel, my kids might be at risk. So I'm sitting here just sucking it up, right? And doing the best that I can until it came to the point that people around me started noticing, because when I was on my lives, I started falling asleep, like literally narcoleptic, because my body had no energy.
Yeah.
And it was so bad. And then I got blood work done again. I got it tested. They tested me for lupus because it was, again, so bad that they wanted to test me for MS, lupus, scleroderma, and like 3 others. And the test came back fine. Mm-hmm. But the sediment rate, or whatever the heck it's called, or whatever that other thing is, which still doesn't make sense to me, came back beyond high, like 4 times normal. Yep. So they wanted to do an ultrasound, see if I had thyroid cancer. As of now, there's just a nodule. It's not cancerous, yada, yada, all the fun crap. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I turned that corner, yes, I upped my medication. Mm-hmm. I started sleeping a little bit better. But I also slowed my schedule down and I took a step back and I started pausing from everything because it's something I never do, is take time for me. And now if you look at my schedule, it used to be back to back for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. plus taking care of the 3 kids, doing 8 to 11 lives a week, like really being present in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Except for to myself, obviously, right? Because, what do I need to take care of myself for? Um, and I look at it and I'm really healing and I'm really making progress. And 90% of the pain is gone.
Yeah.
I am overall have most of my energy back. I'm probably about 85 to 90%.
Yeah.
Still, it's still not fully back. It's been probably 3 weeks and I'm still not. But I also am not worried about any of the other things that they were scared of, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that's not the case. I just know it isn't. This was a me thing.
Mm-hmm.
This was a me ignoring me and having to deal with ignoring me, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what the universe does, which is kicks us in the face to remind us you're not taking care of you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wasn't as extreme as yours, but it was probably heading that direction.
I mean, it sounds the same, the narcolepsy and just like the intensity of pain and
I've never felt anything like it.
but I mean, it required the deepest rest. The deepest rest. I've never rested like that. I've never, and I was still like trying, like operating, like I would still be taking like certain investor calls, but I did let my business partners know. I was like, hey, like this is like really severe. I actually don't know what's going to happen. And then, um, I dealt with it, but like I certainly tried to clear my schedule as much as possible. Like, as you know, like I had just self-published a book and I was supposed to be promoting it. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And a really interesting thing happened for me was that because I was in this state where the only thing I had space for, time for, energy for, awareness for was my body. I became so focused. Like even my husband would say, because as you know, I have a mind that synthesizes and is always picking things up and seeing patterns and putting them together, my patterns, other people's patterns, the collective's patterns. I'm constantly like,
Mm-hmm.
and like what I need to do and what I haven't done. And it's like very clear in my mind because it's just a pattern that I can like go into. But it just turned into like one point, be with your pain, be in your body and like notice it. Cause our body is the channel. Like there's nothing else. It's the body. So if the body's screaming, it's because it's been neglected. And I really underestimated the amount of stress that I was under because I have a tendency to not want to like admit if I'm not doing well,
Mm-hmm.
because I think part of it stems from, knowing that if we attach to certain thoughts, they can manifest. So I don't want to be a hypochondriac, be like, oh my God, this thing, I might be sick. Like, no, I'm not going there. I don't want to talk about it, to my detriment, because I also therefore wasn't noticing because I was burying it because I just had this like, I was just going through so much, especially the last half of 2020 when we sold our home, bought a new one. I was publishing my book. I had like this massive like fallout with the publishing company I was working with. I had to self-publish. I had to figure it out. I had to move. I had to deal with my lender. I was still working, and and so and I was still always planning for the future. Uh and so it was just a lot and I didn't understand that. And my body certainly did. And so it was like a full stop. But what it also was a form of a purge. I mean, like I was sweating through 4 towels at night. Sleeping was a nightmare. I did not want to go to sleep because my body couldn't regulate temperature. So it was freezing cold all day. And then I would get into bed under the covers and it would just sweat and sweat and sweat. So I was just purging a lot. And when I came out of it, a few weeks later, because by now, right, we're end of April, I'm like fully back out. Like I'm back to my normal weight. I'm working out. I'm doing handstands, like for what it's worth. Like I'm doing like everything. I'm like working with a naturopath to do a full gut microbiome rebuild. Because it got wiped out. And
Right.
75% of our immune system's in our gut. Digestive health is primary key to overall all health. But I came out of it really strongly, but I also came out of it and I lost a whole set of limiting beliefs and thoughts and veils. They're gone. And I can't even identify what they are because they're so gone. I can't even remember. The only thing I do remember is coming out of it and thinking, huh, I don't have that thought anymore, which had everything to do with showing up, with sharing more of my journey, with sharing more of the mystical, with sharing the groundedness, with potentially helping, because I'm like called like to share, because a lot of people go through things and they don't understand. They don't always relate to spiritual teachings or like super spiritual stuff. And I've done a deep exploration of that for years, and I continue to, because it interests me and I find my answers there when I apply them to my own life. So a lot of that was just, it was just gone. And I didn't ask for it to be gone. I wasn't like trying to make it gone or releasing or consciously doing anything. I was just really focused on my body and a really deep understanding that I was still me, even though I couldn't physically function as I used to, which
Mhm.
is primary thing to think about, because we associate ourselves with our body so much. And so like, what if you can't? I mean, like, deep illness is a form of death. We don't like to go there, but we need to, right? Like, we're always like dying to something, dying to a past self, like dying to something. And it's not a bad thing. There's a lot of stigma about that in the culture, right? Like, don't talk about death. It's such a bad, no. Um, if you see it for what it truly is, it it's really a portal. Like, it's really like something much more than a binary good or bad. Because if we're not losing things, then we can't make space for other things. It's really simple.
Well, and if you look at it from a lifetime, right? You're talking about, let's say, even 100 years. Let's say 120 years, just for extremes. On this, in the speck of that's a speck of dust in the timeline of everything.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're over glorifying our time on this planet, our time in this experience, and losing sight of how to continue our experience outside of it, right?
Mhm.
And what we're here to learn. And it's my body reacted different. I didn't have the tremendous heat, the temperature fluctuation. For me, it was just so much pain.
Yeah.
Like, I was just in pain, and I neglected resting. For me, looking back as I identify, like, I was like the healthiest I've ever been when this started.
Me too.
But what I wasn't doing I wasn't taking a break,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Yeah.
wasn't giving myself time,
Yeah.
and I wasn't being patient with myself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's okay. I'm on fire. I gotta push this, push this, push this, and
Mm-hmm.
then I just that was it. Like, it just crushed me.
Yeah.
I remember the week I was talking to a couple of the people that I go live with regularly, like, the Misfits and all them, and I'm like, God, I just did 11 lives this week. 11 on top of the kid, and this was spring break week when the kids were home. I had all three kids in the house. I did 11 lives. They were switching schools. I was getting them set up. I had to get their doctors moved. I got everything done, and I'm like looking around, and it was that Monday that I started to fall on my face.
Mm-hmm.
That Monday when they started school, it was it. Like, I felt like I was dead. Like, whatever energy I had or whatever adrenaline I had to
Yeah.
get it all done was like the last drop of what my body wanted to give me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, get the kids set up, but then you're falling on your damn face. It was
Yeah.
torture to wake up in the morning to get them ready and out of the house. It was torture feeding them, taking care of them when they got home, and making sure they were bathed and clean clothes. Like, I mean, I had 7 clean loads of laundry just sitting on the floor in the family room because I couldn't do it. I had no energy,
Yeah.
and I don't have an option, right? It's me or nothing. So, like, it was torturous, like, so bad. I want to talk about your book also. I really want to talk about. Damn it! productive intuition,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Ooh, I
Yep.
got it right. See, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about that because I love the name. I don't read,
Mhm.
right? I listen to books. I don't read, so I'm not going to
Yeah.
pretend I read it. But I do. But I do want to. I want to understand it. And I want you to be able to share what it is
Mhm.
because knowing you, right, which I do for many lives, this is productive intuition is just who you are, right? It,
Mhm.
it really does define you in a lot of ways because you're
Mhm.
always about your intuitions consistently creating productivity, and through your productivity, your intuition's kicking in. So you have this life cycle within that one phrase that really carries you to your essence.
Mhm.
So what I'd like to do is give you some time to really talk about that.
Sure.
I'm going to go grab more coffee because I just do this. It's my show. I can get up and walk out if I want.
Okay.
And I'm going to be on the other side of the room. I'll hear you, but we can run it. You got this. This is your book.
Okay.
You know it better than me.
All right. Well, I guess I know you can hear me if and you're getting your coffee, and like for anybody that's watching this right now or later. Actually, it's interesting you framed it that way. I hadn't actually thought about that it's actually me. Because primarily I would say I would want to redefine productivity. I like redefining everything because I think it's really important um, to really get under or get behind or like fully understand the meaning of things, especially words. Because if you take the etymology of a word, oftentimes you'll see how distorted it's become. Um, and so, from the perspective of this book and productivity, it starts with a reframe of productivity. Yes, there's an understanding of productivity being linear, like output, numerically based, quantifiable, but in reality, productivity is a form of creativity or generativity. Like productivity is actually you in your most empowered state of creation. And when you are in that state, which we'll talk about like how you get there and why intuition's part of it. Like when you are in that state, you produce, you manifest, you create, you output very effortlessly. And this goes beyond flow because flow is one part of it. It's a mental, physiological like thing that happens in your brain. But it kind of starts with this idea that productivity is up for you to define. And it starts with that because, in essence, the book is about finding your inner authority, like that place in you that's of internal validation, that is like your fully centered self with like everything you've got. And really defining also your alignment, your authority, and just taking that all back inside so that what's your output? Like, what's productivity for you? What's productive? Like, to me, being productive is a combination of being fulfilled and making an impact. Like, that's it. Like, whether I'm talking to my clients on the investing side or talking to you or having a conversation with a neighbor, like, it comes into this being of service and coming from a place of like choosing, like, really being like empowered to be in total control of our choices. So, I mean, that it kind of starts with that. Intuition is there because we are intuitive, we're hardwired for intuition. I mean, it's like literally in our biology. And so there's a ton of research in the book that that explains all of this because it's mind blowing and it's exciting because you see the neuroscience, you see the neurobiology, like you see all, and it's not the quantum side, that too, but just the biology side. It starts to wake up in your linear mind like, wait, hold on, this might be real. Because so many of us are like, meh, intuition, fake, it's for psychics, not for me, and so we actually need to help ourselves get on board with with the mind by giving it something that it can say, oh, I get that. And you need that mind to like, it's kind of like giving a dog a bone so you can go do what you need to do. It's totally the same with the mind. um, and so that's really like, I guess, in a nutshell, the book. It contains practices, it contains a lot of my stories for like how I figured all of this out. It's very much the story of my awakening. It's not a memoir, it's not autobiographical, but it's meant to empower you, especially people who identify as professionals, who are like, wait a second, but I can't even go on a retreat, let alone think about having an awakening. I don't have time for an awakening. Well, sorry, it's going to happen and you might be in it. And so how do you ground it? How do you stay? How did I stay? How did I manifest my business partners, which like, it's been the most amazing experience to be with them. Like, how was I able to, and how do I continue to be able to like constantly integrate? And I'm not out there preaching anything. I'm just out there showing up saying like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's the allowing of acknowledging that there's parts of you that you've been suppressing. And once you stop suppressing, that's the equivalent of allowing. And then you start this amazing process that just opens and opens and opens. And like having somebody like you, Michael, that does the show and like talking about this all the time. And like, there are people out there, there's so many of us that exist in different spaces that are talking about it, because it's important, because the awakening isn't about exiting society. It's about staying in it and changing it with yourself first, through your actions second, and then it goes and it ripples out. We can't afford to lose people to the monastery. Like, we need you to stay, right? That's what I believe. That's my belief.
So when I look at, there's a few ways I like to describe it, right? An awakening is finding your soul's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's standing into your soul's purpose and living daily in it, right? So I'm a very logical person, and I know you are as well, right? Like, we break everything down so damn much. It's ridiculous, and it drains the crap out of us.
Yeah.
We're so over analytical. So when I look at this, right, like I sometime after we spoke, I started creating this term. It's called hyperacutely self-aware, because it keeps me vigilant on living into my core values daily, right? So once I was able to define my core values, because, they don't teach that in school, God forbid. So once I actually, at 41 and a half years old, decided what they were, because, why do it the easy way? So I waited to 41 and a half. Once I knew what they were, I was able to go back and start living into them, right?
Yes.
And for me, it's the clear communication, the transparent honesty, the blunt honesty. I'd rather hurt someone in the short term, but be so honest and so radically honest that they know that I will never lie, because it's not worth it to me. Mm-hmm. It's not who I am. And at my core, I need that transparency. It doesn't make every conversation comfortable. I promise you it doesn't, right? It just doesn't. No. But it does make me true to who I am. Yeah. And that means more to me than being comfortable. So this whole thing of awakening, transcending, awakening, transformation, being connected, because I call it connectedness, right? Like, you can term it however you want. Yeah. It's all the same thing. It's building that relationship within, right? So then accepting, to me, is the mental process. Allowing is the emotional process, and releasing is the soul's releasing of it, so that we clear our path for it all. And that's what I've started creating for myself. Right. And like you said, it's that ripple effect, that once you do it inward, you then reflect it outward. And the people that attract to you already have that connection with you, because there's a reason you're connecting to them intuitively. I never trusted myself because I never lived in my core values. How can I trust myself if I'm not living to who I am?
Yeah, 100%. That's actually that's part of the book, like the book, right? It's like, that's like a huge part of it, is aligning. It's alignment to your values, to your deep driving desires, and what's underneath it, right? Like, not a wish or a want, but like underneath it, we're all driven towards fulfillment. That underneath that is knowing ourselves and trusting ourselves. That's what this book is about, is how to trust yourself, how to trust your body, how to trust your emotions, how to trust your mind. Because like no one's here saying, kick the mind to the curb. Like that is the incorrect way to do this. You're only going to continue to create separation within yourself. If you vilify the mind or vilify the ego, it's not about that. It's actually about total acceptance and integration and understanding the role of everything, especially the things that are unwanted, and understanding their purpose. It's and you start to move away from binary thinking, polarized thinking, into really understanding that idea of two sides of a coin, or it's all the same, or the yin yang symbol. Like you actually start to embody that understanding with a higher place, like with a higher level of mind. And when you have that, when you hit a space where you don't have to think about something, but you operate in a totally different way. But as long as we remain stuck in a place of like, this is bad, I didn't like that. You talked about discomfort. It's hugely important. Like, I think discomfort, I call it like the mini me of fear, right? Because most of the time we're not afraid. We just don't want to deal with somebody. We don't want their reaction. We like, it's just us not wanting to put ourselves in a situation that's going to feel uncomfortable. That's all it is. And like when we get over that, it's so liberating.
And then, so like for me, because I'm clairvoyant also.
Mm.
So like for me, the anticipation of it makes me nuts, right?
Yeah.
It does, because I see it coming. I just see it coming. I know it's coming. Like I know what's coming. And then I see the infinite timelines, and I see how they all intertwine and entangle, and like it drives me crazy a lot of times. Like there is times where I just have to stop. Like if there is an off button for my mind, I need to do it, because my mind's not meant to process what I can tap into. It's just not.
That's right. Yeah.
And I keep trying to process it, and that's me trying to control that, right? And I think that was just an awareness statement, because I don't think I ever said that out loud before. But that's me trying to control the outcome rather than just living in the moment. Just because I can see it doesn't mean I have to impact it, or any of those things. And I make jokes about Doctor Strange and that scene where he's sitting on whatever the rock was, and he's looking at all the things, and he tells Tony Stark there's one option that works and we win, yada yada yada. And that's how I feel sometimes. Like my mind goes nuts. Like it just tries to wrap my head around infinite possibilities. And just because I can tap into universal knowledge doesn't mean that my brain can handle it. It just doesn't, right? It's there to use. It's just not there for me to try and control how I use it.
Yeah.
Like my intuition tells me what I need to know from it to make the next right decision, and help guide others towards their next right decisions.
Yeah.
It's when I start getting a little ego-ish, and I feel like I need to have a bigger impact within that structure, that I slip into my human crap, and it goes into almost like a form of escapism for me, right? And if anybody who's watched my shows knows that I've literally tried every single type of escapism, and none of them really work out well for me. Actually, no, they don't work out well for me at all. But like it's all there, and I know that when those behaviors start becoming wanted again, that I'm missing a bigger picture of something, and because I'm hyper acutely self-aware, which is horrible grammar, and I don't care. Doesn't even sound good together, but I don't care. Because for me, it's how I turn my over analytical mind into a positive reframe. And it truly does work. And it is helping me to stay within me. And it's keeping me grounded. It's keeping me centered. And it's keeping me away from trying to control those things. Because I'm not here to control it. I'm here to play my role. Right? And that's something I've got to remember. Just because I have access to everything doesn't mean I need to work with everything. I need to just be me, and everything else works itself out in the universe. I don't need to do anything. It all comes to me when the time's right. And I see it. I see it clearly. I'm almost done fighting it. Almost. I'm pretty damn stubborn. Almost.
Yeah. It's interesting. So it's kind of like a spectrum of light, right? Like like a funnel. And we all have access to this, and it's infinite. And it comes down to like a point.
Mm-hmm.
And that point is your focus, and it is your mind. It's a level of conscious awareness. And but I think with the mind, there's a fear of, I don't want to forget this.
Right.
This is such a good idea. This is such a good, and there's also like, at least for me, is this idea, this like fear of like, but I don't want to forget it. I want to do something with it. And like, well, maybe that's not mine to do
Right.
with, right?
Right.
Like, just because I can understand things, or I know things, doesn't mean that I need to do anything with it. And that's a really powerful realization, because then you're just like, oh, I can just enjoy it, or it comes to me, like if you've ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, she kind of talks about this with the story of creativity and how they're genius, right? You can call it genius, where
Mm-hmm.
it might come to you, a great idea might come to you, but also might come to somebody else. And we just have to, it's this ego thing of self-importance too, of like, well, I want that to be my idea. Or like, how many inventions have come out, or apps or startups, and somebody's just like, I had that idea. And it's like, probably because it exists, and and you can find it, but he who, or she who, they who do something with it, that was their path to take. And it's very much about like true ego, of wanting to be important, of wanting to be validated, of wanting something to be its own, when in reality nothing is our own,
No, not a
other
single thing.
than our experience of life. Other than
Yes.
our experience of life. But everything up here that we can tap into, it's not mine. I didn't write this book.
No.
I wrote it. But sometimes I read it, I'm like, I really don't remember writing that, or like, where did that come from?
It's
Because
purely channeled. Purely.
yeah, it's not me. It is me. The stories are me. How I relate to it is me. And when we can get that out of the way, true selflessness, that's a whole other level of allowing, which I only touch into every once in a while, right? Because it's not like I like live in this like enlightened state all the time. But when I'm there, it feels like pure peace and pure trust, and that all elusive sense of surrender, but it's very empowered. It's
What's
empowered surrender.
It's funny you say that, because what I did the last 3 years before this current 15-month, reawakening,
Mm-hmm,
I felt so guilty that I turned my back on my purpose and everything else,
mm-hmm.
that I networked like a crazy man around the world, and literally would intuitively just give the ideas to people that were meant to have them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because if they weren't ready to tap into their knowledge, I gave it to them.
Mm.
Because I knew it wasn't mine,
Yeah.
and I just intuitively would know who to give it to.
Yeah.
And I must have given away over 1,000 ideas in the 3 years prior to this 15 months.
Mm-hmm.
And by clearing that out of my way, my purpose, the ideas that are truly meant for me to facilitate, because again, they're not mine,
Yeah.
but to facilitate and implement based on my soul's purpose, are that much clearer today.
Yeah.
And now it makes more sense for me, because I spent so much time just giving the ideas to those who were meant to have them. And I still do it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Almost every conversation I have, I'm dropping little hints of knowledge and wisdom to them, and I don't even know if they really notice at the time, right? Because people hear what they want to hear when they need to hear it.
Yes.
So I drop wisdom all the time. Whether people listen to it at the moment is a whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
Whether 3 people watch this episode, or whether 3,000 or 3 million people watch this episode, they're all going to grab what they grab over time.
Yes.
And since this is stored in an infinite data bank of internet and storage, and as long as the internet's around, this is going to be saved.
Yeah.
It means that generations future can still tap into this current conversation and pull something from it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something to pull from everything. And the magic happens during conversation.
Yeah.
It's the connected conversations that bring magic. And me and you need to catch up on something, because something just came to me now.
Okay.
So for us, yeah, we have to catch up soon.
Yeah. No, I
And
would love to. Yeah.
we're at the end of the show. Is there anything that you want to add?
I'll add this because you brought up magic, and I started by talking about words and redefining words, and this idea of magic and spells. And I'll just leave people with this and let your higher mind, your soul kind of play with this concept, is that spells are real. This idea of being under a spell. And the power of words, the power of naming things, the power of speaking is a way to cast a spell. The root word of spelling is spell. All right. So really choose your words. Really choose your words. Like, I love the dictionary. Like, I love it. I love going in there and understanding the etymology of words and just like making the connections, but truly looking at how we speak to ourselves. First and foremost, how we speak to ourselves. That's it. Because we're putting ourselves under a spell. Start with that and then see how it lands.
It's the more I help others reframe, the more I reframe for myself too. It's that constant mirror, right?
Yeah.
So the more that I have these conversations and I speak to people one-on-one and I coach people, train people, whatever you want to call it, mentor them, guide. I hate all those words because they're dumb. I'm just showing people what I see in my own mirror. Yeah. You like it, you like it. You don't like it most of the time. That's not my fault.
Yeah.
Go find a new mirror. Find a mirror that has similar, different problems than the ones that's similar to mine, and you'll be fine. Maybe you'll get something you like there. But it's really funny though. The reframe is so important. And it's funny because Annie, right? Annie Lieb, the one that I introduced you to, she taught me to reframe. Mm. And now it's to the point that even in our casual conversations, our conversations about business, whatever we talk about, the minute she makes a comment that is just not as positive, it doesn't even have to be negative, not as positive as it should be, I call her on immediately now. Yeah. And she just looks at me and laughs. And she's like, I guess you learned that from somebody. And I'm like, yeah, you. Yeah. And because I never looked at it that way before. It's the self-talk, because the way that you talk to yourself is how you talk to the outside world.
Yes.
So if you improve how you talk to yourself, then the outside world gets a much better reflection. So maybe if you want to improve the reflection that people get, then improve yourself.
Yeah.
And do the work.
It's the principle of everything, right? It's like, it's not changing anything else out there. It's not anyone else that has to change. It's just ourselves. Like, that's it. Like, we just have to constantly be reframing ourselves, especially if we're in situations that we don't like. Like, no one else is going to change. And it's crazy talk to think that they are. You're waiting for somebody to change. You're going to be waiting a damn long time for them.
Well, they change when we change. Right?
And that's the magic of it. That's like the magic of it. And so that's why it's so important to like come back within, like connecting inside, like whatever that is, right? Like inner authority, like there's definitely like a soul level self. There's so much connection. We're connected to infinite field, intelligence, however you want to call it, great spirit, like that connection all exists. But the focus needs to always come back. Like that laser beam has to always come back to ourselves. Like, and yeah, the mirrors and the triggers will constantly come at us until we've worked through them, until they don't activate anymore. And then the triggers magically disappear. They do. They're gone. But we have to learn.
I don't know if it's that simple. It's not like they magically are gone. It takes work.
It's not magic, but it seems magical. Because one day they just stop.
Yeah, one day they don't impact you. Then you find new ones though. But don't forget, new ones do show up very regularly.
Yeah, I mean, life is not about. Life is about this constant finding of like polishing that mirror of like finding ourselves. Like it's constant, like refinement. But they change. They go away, new ones come in. And when they do, maybe there's a welcoming. maybe there's a welcoming of them and just saying like, okay, I got to work on this right now. And when I work through it, I'll be clear and I'll be done with it. And then every time you get through one,
a new one
I'm
shows.
like, bring it on. Oh no, I'm just like, bring it.
Yeah.
Because I can handle it. And the more we
You're more
handle
prepared.
it, the more we're able to handle. And yes, some of them are going to be 100% absolutely brutal. And then, but for the most part, it's kind of like, you know, if you think of like a line, right? It goes up, like a stock market, whatever you want to call it. You're always gonna, like, as you do this with your awakening, you're gonna set new floors.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the beginning, it's gonna feel like this all the time. And then after
Oh,
a
yeah.
while, it kind of goes like this, and you'll have periods of taper, and then it'll like spike up maybe, but you've hit a new floor every time, and you're so much more able to handle things. And so the fun part of it is noticing and celebrating what you can handle, right? It's celebrating what you feel like, oh, that doesn't trigger me anymore. And like
Yeah.
doing a little happy dance, like, what? That's amazing. And just letting that be and not dwelling on it. Like, I can't even call forward things I've let go anymore. I'm like, I don't even remember what they are. I just know they're gone. Because in the moment I realize they're gone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we're going to do a part 2 because I have to run. It's not an option at this point.
Yes.
We are definitely going to keep doing this because I love talking to you. The message is amazing. And together we do make magic, and it's great.
Yeah.
So I will see you in a second. Let me hit end live. Eventually this will end.